What are we talking about?
You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it. Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
Can't wait.
Let's go!
Good morning and welcome to Coffee and Sports. It's the morning show here on Sports Empire Network. I am Chris and that is Mo. Mo, how are you this morning on a football week 2 Fallout Monday?
You know what? There was so much to go on, so much to talk about. I'm just stoked for today's show because there's a lot to get into in both college and pro football.
There is a lot to break down, and Mo, right off the bat, before we even start dissecting it and figuring out what the hell did we see in week 2 of the NFL this season, I want to start the show by bringing on the one and the only JG. JG, welcome to the show this morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, JG.
JG, I sat there this weekend and I tried to figure out who is going to win the Cy Young in the NL. And I came up with like 6 different names. So I had to have you on the show this morning because I can't figure out who's the front runner here, who is the guy that has the edge when it comes to the NL Cy Young. And I'm looking at the possible names and what the race might shape up to be. And this could end up being one of the biggest Cy Young potential, like first place getting fields that we've had in some time, because I don't see a clear leader of the pack when it comes to the Cy Young in the NL with only a couple of weeks left in the season.
Yeah, this is going to be probably the tightest Cy Young vote race that we've had in a very long time. Usually we have a clear-cut front runner. We've had that last year with Sandy Alcantara from the Marlins. We've had Ohtani at times in the American League. This year, we don't have that. We have, as you said, there's about 6 names you can throw out there and make an argument for to be a Cy Young winner in 2023. You know, Blake Snell's pitched really well for San Diego, and it depends on how you want to look at the voters. Let's say, you know, does the team success matter? That's something that it has been a factor in decision making for awards. If that's the case, you can't necessarily go with the Blake Snell because the Padres have been very disappointing this year. But Blake Snell has performed, and he's been consistent. Justin Steele for the Cubs, who came out of nowhere this year, he's pitched very well, and he's been very consistent for the Cubs and keeping them in the wild card race. And if they make the wild card, which they're in line to do so right now, that's a very big factor that you can go. Same thing with Zach Gallen and the Diamondbacks. Zach Gallen's been one of the better pitchers this year throughout the season for Arizona. Again, if they make the wild card, that's a consideration if you're a voter that wants to look in that direction. Spencer Strider. As a Braves fan, I will say Strider in recent starts has fallen off to where I can't. If you would have asked me a month ago, I would have said Spencer Strider's the Cy Young winner. How he struggled the last couple of starts, it's kind of soured on me a little bit. So I can't actually. I'm going to show restraint on being biased. That I can't necessarily say Spencer Strider is a Cy Young winner right now. He'll be a top 3 vote getter because he is leading. He's tied for wins. He's leading the league in strikeouts. He's got the good stats. He's got the non-advanced stats. So that's another factor is, are you looking at the analytics? Or are you looking at the basic stats, if you will? And if that's the case, if you're looking for the analytical numbers, Blake Snell and Justin Steele are ahead of Spencer Strider. If you're looking at the basic non-analytical stats, Spencer Strider and Zach Gallen look really good. So it's one of those things that you're going to have to nitpick this year. The voters are going to have to nitpick to see who's going to be the favorite in the Cy Young for the National League. And you can make an argument on 4, 5, and 6 guys that can be a Cy Young winner in 2023.
So, JG, if you had to pick right now, who would be getting your vote? If you had to a vote to extend, who's getting your vote for the NL Cy Young?
I would go Zach Gallen. Zach Gallen has been the better pitcher throughout the year, and he's been the reason why the Diamondbacks have gotten into the conversation of a wild card. And they actually at one point were leading the National League West throughout the summer, and they've been in a conversation of competing with the Diamondbacks in this division. Zach Gallen has been the reason why. He has pitched very well consistently all year. Whereas you have guys, like I said, Strider's been one who's been up and down at times. Steele didn't get into the conversation until recently for how well he's pitched for Cy Young candidacy. Blake Snell, you could make an argument again for Blake Snell to be right there with Gallen, but for consistency purposes, from the beginning of the season to now, Zach Gallen has been one of the better pitchers in the National League, and I'm going to go with Zach Gallen.
JG, as always, we appreciate your insight. Now, before we leave the baseball world, let's jump real quick to a topic that probably no one really talks about because the team's not very good, and that is the Angels. And it looks like, and this is something that hasn't really happened a lot with the Angels. It looks like they're open to potentially moving Mike Trout. And obviously this would have been a much bigger conversation 3 or 4 years ago when Mike Trout was a little bit younger. But obviously it is what it is. But JG, I asked this because he is a little bit older. He does make a lot of money. Realistically, what is a landing spot for Mike Trout?
You're still going to have a lot of teams interested in Mike Trout, and that's just because the talent's still there. Is the health concerns, a big factor now? Yes. As you said, it was just 3-4 years ago. I think people would be a little bit less concerned of the injury history he's had, but we've had more injury history over the last 3-4 years where he's just missed his time, where it's a wrist injury, a hamstring injury. He's missed a lot of time over the time span, but you still know he is still a very talented baseball player. He's still one of the better baseball players in the league. So there is a market that's going to be there, and you're going to have a team that's going to be very interested. You got to make sure you have a team that has the money, even though they're going to make the Angels have to eat some of that money, and that's what's going to be the biggest factor. Is and the Angels may be okay to say, you know what, hey, we're not going to eat so much money. We're not going to take on that, a portion of what for you. So we'll keep Trout, so we don't have to trade him. But if you want to get the assets that you want out of him, you're going to have to eat a lot of that money of the contract. You have a team like Philadelphia, which he's from the New Jersey area, but he's a big Philadelphia sports fan. You have the Atlanta Braves that are going to be looking for an outfielder, and I think that might be an interesting topic. Could Mike Trout be someone that can fit in the outfield and play left field for the Braves? Possibly. Am I thinking that's likely? I don't think that's likely. But that's another team that's going to be interested in another outfielder this offseason. But Mike Trout could be that one if you want to go in that direction. You could say Chicago Cubs. I think the Chicago Cubs, and I'm looking at a lot of National League teams because a lot of these teams that are contenders right now, they're going to need some outfield help here pretty soon. They're going to need some outfield, have a little bit more depth in there, and be able to have another talented outfielder roaming there. Chicago Cubs could be someone that you could look at and say they could be interested. It depends on what they do with Cody Bellinger as well, though. That would be the biggest question mark on that. In the American League, I'm trying to. The issue is a lot of the big market teams, Yankees, Red Sox, they have a lot of holes still other than outfield that I don't know if they're going to be sitting there saying, well, yeah, we'll make a move for Mike Trout. And that's going to solve a lot of our issues. That's not going to solve a lot of the issues. So the big market teams in the American League, there's a lot of question marks that you can sit there and say that it's not going to be a right fit for. So I think more of a National League team is going to be one that's going to make an attempt to get Mike Trout and have the resources that's necessary with the farm depth to make a trade for prospects that the Angels may want, as well as a little bit of the money that they're going to need to take on that contract that Trout has.
And Kyle in the chat brings up an interesting question. If you're running a team, would you rather trade for Trout or sign Ohtani? And I think both come with their own set of circumstances and their own set of risks, especially with Ohtani and the surgery and what is it going to look like with his pitching career and when is Ohtani even going to be available to you. But at the same time, you can ask the same things about Trout because he can start a season healthy like he does most seasons. And it really is anyone's guess, JG, of how many games he's actually going to play during a year because his injury history is getting more frequent and it's been consistent throughout his career. So I think there's a lot of risks regardless of which player you're looking at here. Obviously, with Ohtani, you're just giving up money, not necessarily prospects or anything because he's a free agent. But if you're a GM, what are you looking at if you have the funds and the access to acquire either? What are you looking at for the future of your team if you think you're a piece away?
For me, I'm looking at. I would be leaning towards Ohtani. Ohtani's 28 years old. He'll be 29 next year. Trout's 32 years old. He'll be 33 next year. I know the injuries are a little bit for both, but if I'm looking at it and say, well, Ohtani's a DH, and I know he is a pitcher too, so the likelihood of injury is lessened because he's just a DH. He's not going to be out in the field. We know Trout's going to be a center fielder or an outfielder still for the rest of his career, and there'll be a time where he may just be a DH. I don't think we're there for Mike Trout yet. But the age-wise that he's 3 years younger, Ohtani's 3 years younger than Trout, you have 3 more years of prime of Ohtani. So I think that does have to be a factor. Age has to still be a factor for this. At the same time, as we've seen Ohtani at his peak, we're seeing Ohtani at his peak currently. I think we're on the down slope of Mike Trout's career, not too far down the slope right now. I think I'm not throwing him over the hill yet. I'm not giving him the Aaron Rodgers over the hill speech right now, but I'm kind of being facetious on that. But I think we're seeing Trout kind of on the downward slope of it because we are seeing a lot of the younger guys and the younger generation of MLB players kind of supplanting Trout as the best player, best outfielder in the game. Trout is still the generational talent that we've seen over the last 10 years. And I'm going to continue to put him on the Mount Rushmore of this generation's outfield list. But I think we're seeing Trout going downhill a little bit right now in his career, whereas Ohtani, even as a DH, is still at the peak. It's still peaking in his career. So with the talent, with the age being a big factor, being 3 years younger, that we're seeing Ohtani at his best right now. We're not seeing Trout when he's healthy at his best. I'm going to go with Shohei Ohtani as one to start it, to basically build my team around.
And JG, like I said, if we want baseball talk, you are the person to go to. And right now we're going to pivot a little bit. We're going to pivot a little bit to college football. And Mo, so much of the talk in the college football world, as it is every week, and I think it's going to continue to be every week, especially as Colorado is currently undefeated. And if they remain undefeated until they finally pick up their first loss, I'm not saying they're going to go undefeated their entire season, but as long as they remain undefeated, this is going to be a talking point going into every college football week, especially if you have opposing coaches doing the nonsense that they're doing to catch the headlines as well, along with whatever Prime's doing to get his headlines. But Mo, we saw a result that didn't necessarily match up with what we thought we were going to see, in the sense of you had a 20-plus point favorite in Coach Prime's Colorado team go in there and not perform and execute like a 20-point favorite. They ended up getting a win. They come out double overtime. There were some great moments towards the end of the game for them. But by no means, in my opinion, a performance you're going to hang your hat on, because it's never a good look necessarily when you're a 24-point favorite and you almost have to pull the game out in the regulation and then survive double overtime to get a W. But a win is a win, right? And again, for a program that no one really expected much from, to start the season off 3-0, Mo, I think, if you looked at this realistically, I think they're exceeding everyone's expectations now. And we're going to talk to JG in a minute about what those expectations might be, because there were some very interesting comparisons made to this current team with some teams that might be close to JG's heart. But we'll talk about that in a second. But Mo, what did you see from Colorado? And again, I ask you this every week, and I'm going to ask you again this week. Where are you on that meter? Because Mo, it's all over the place. We got people talking, potential playoffs for Colorado. We got people talking bowl game. We got people all over the map when it comes to the 3-0 Colorado Buffaloes. Mo, where do you sit this morning?
So nothing changed for me in terms of the bigger picture. I think Colorado will make a bowl game. They will not go undefeated. And we can start for one basic reason: they're not good on defense at all. They're just not. And even though they have a couple, and literally a couple of playmakers on defense, it doesn't make you a good defense. It just means that those playmakers, you might get an interception, you might get a strip tackle or something of that nature. But they're a bad defensive team, and because they're a bad defensive team, they're going to be in shootouts. You're right. They were a 20-point favorite. And look, all of us, I think most of us thought, and even all other analysts thought, well, after the things that were said, they're going to come out and they're going to beat them down by 30, right? They're going to smack them in the mouth, beat them down, maybe score on them with 2 minutes left just to rub it in, like all those kinds of things. And Colorado State came out and punched them in the mouth. They kind of literally punched them in the mouth. But they were a much more physical team. They were more aggressive. They controlled possession. Like they slowed Colorado down offensively and had no problem moving the ball up and down the field on them because Colorado just doesn't have a lot up front defensively. So I was disappointed maybe in the sense that I thought it was going to be a beatdown, but I guess you could put a spin on it. They were behind. It looked like they were going to lose. This was going to be a major upset, and Coach Prime might have had to eat crow. And give those kids credit. They showed some resolve, right? You could have easily packed it in. Hunter goes down. That's one of your two best players. He goes down, and they found a way to pull it together and made a great rally and found a way to win that game. So it's a disappointment if you're looking for the blowout, but to come away with the win, that's really all that matters. And so while I'm excited, and I think we'll all agree, Colorado right now is their must-see. They're the talk of college football to a degree. But realistically, I do not see the Colorado Buffaloes being in the playoffs. I just don't.
JG, we talked on this show over a month ago about Michigan and Coach Harbaugh and how he made a proclamation, that his team is going to break the record for most players drafted in the first 7 rounds of the NFL draft. And he's saying he's got 20 plus NFL players, draftable NFL talent on his team right now. And we kind of made fun of Harbaugh, and we're looking at it and we're like, you might have like 14, 15, somewhere around there. You don't have 20 plus easy. But the thing is, though, JG, you could probably look at the Michigan roster and you could make me a list of 20 plus, where maybe 5 or 6 are like, I don't think so. But if they went into the 6th or 7th round, I wouldn't be shocked. You cannot come close to that with this Colorado team. Like Mo literally said, you might have a couple of people on this roster that are considered locks for the NFL, but this is by no means, JG, a college program that is just stacked top to bottom with NFL talent. But yet it seems like every win this team piles up the narrative more and more, and no one's doing it directly. Like, I haven't seen a conversation where someone's like, well, if they go play a Georgia, or, if they go play one of those teams, well, you'll see how. No one has said that, JG, but they keep putting them into the conversation as though they could, as though they should be referred to in that group of teams. Am I crazy to sit here and look at this and be like, they're a great story, but they're not a good team? Like, where do you sit on this when it comes to this running national narrative, and especially, and it might be more fan-driven, this is not a playoff team, nor is it going to be a playoff team.
No, they're not going to be a playoff team, and that they kind of got exposed a little bit this weekend in regards of it. Did Colorado State get sloppy with how they were trying to be more physical? Yes, that's a problem that Colorado State went too far on. But if you punch them, as Mo said, if you punch them in the mouth figuratively, and I know there were probably a handful of fights that could have taken place in that game, but figuratively, if you punch them in the mouth and you out physical them, you can beat Colorado. So in the aspect of putting them against a Georgia, a Texas, a USC here pretty soon. I know we'll see that matchup with Colorado later in the fall. LSU. You put them against a team that's going to out physical them, you're going to see them probably not match the physicality. If Colorado State just played with some discipline in that physicality, Colorado State wins the game. I really believe that that'd be the case, but because they went too far, the players taking cheap shots and making stupid penalties that took in that game, too many personal foul penalties that cost them, and so credit to Dion and credit to the Colorado team for sticking to the plan of not losing their discipline and be able to fight back and claw back. That's very important. Are they a good team? I'll give them credit that they are a good team. Are they going to be a great team when it's all said? No, they're not. They're still undermanned, and I think everybody knows that. That's why, again, for new coaches that come in to a program, they're going to need 3 years. They're going to need, and I know we're not in that era anymore of coaches needing 3, 4, 5 years to rebuild a program because of the transfer portal. You have opportunities to rebuild a program in less time, and colleges and universities and athletic directors, they're not giving 4 or 5 years anymore. They're basically saying you turn this program in 2 years or we find somebody else who will. So he's going to still need time because you had an 11-loss team in 2022 that you're trying to rebuild. And right now, credit to them that they're 3-0 at the moment. And I know that's we're not putting them on. I say we. I know there's some that are. I know there's some media outlets that are trying to put them on the pedestal, saying, "Wow, look at this. They're doing. They are going to be a great team." Hit the brakes real quick because I don't see that. I don't see that the case. Just that there's so many flaws and so many holes. And again, defense, as you said, defensively, that's the biggest issue. And I think consistency on the offense. And I know Shedeur Sanders has played well, but there's some consistency issues now. We saw this past weekend trying too hard to make too many plays instead of being smart with the ball and taking what the defense is going to give you. That's something in his development is going to continue to be. That's why I said in our group yesterday, the Oregon game this weekend will be an important test, not because I expect them to win. Are they going to be competitive? Oregon has been a team that has been a winner and a contender for over a decade in the Pac-12, and I know it's even longer than that. But I'm just going to say for the decade they have been there and done it. How competitive is Colorado in that game? If they lose by 3, 4, 6, and in that range, I'm impressed by Colorado. I will be impressed. If they lose by 18 to 21, 24 points, okay. The story, then as we said, then it is just a story. Then it is just a story that, saying, hey, the media is putting them on that pedestal to be a contender. They're not there yet. But if they're within 3 to 4 points, 6 points, color me impressed. And I think that's a good step in that direction for Colorado. But how competitive they're going to be, that's going to be the biggest question.
And to JG's point, I mean, I want to remind everybody, no one at Sports Empire Network is rooting against Colorado at all. We're not rooting against them at all. I'm just saying I think that most of us have a more tempered opinion of what they can be this season. It's not like Coach Prime has a slew of 5-star blue chip talented guys. Not yet. He's working on it, but not yet. So realistically, what we're saying is when you go against the bigger schools, the schools who athlete, they have more talent than you. I'm not going to be surprised if Colorado loses. I'm going to say, I think they can make a bowl, and I don't think that's an insult. I think that's a good first year. Remember, we're talking about a program that was 1-11 last year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've already tripled their amount of wins this year. So I think it's realistic to say they can make a bowl. It's a great story. It's a great story because obviously Coach Prime is such an electric figure, so he draws you in and you get caught up in the story. And moving forward, maybe in a year or 2 or 3, like JG said, maybe he can develop Colorado into a power. But right now, I think a lot of national media is overhyping them. And when they lose, the deflation is going to be kind of insane. And I do really think a lot of this, like you said, Chris, it's fan driven, right? A lot of fans want to believe, like, I can't wait to see Colorado. I would love to see Colorado play LSU. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. You would not love that at all.
And Mo, to your point, I mean, and JG, you can probably attest to this. I'm not saying that, Oregon is a national championship contender, but let's be honest, they are a lot closer to that realm than Colorado is. And you're going to see an offense in Oregon this weekend that is going to hang. I mean, they have. Look at the games they've played so far this college football season. They put up a lot of points. And you're looking, Mo, like you said, this is not a good defense. So, JG, I know I agree with you. If it's a 7-point game, an 8-point game, yeah, that's a really respectable showing. But couldn't this just as easily be a 28-point drubbing? I almost feel like you're more likely to see that than you are to see a one-score game, because I don't really know how Colorado is going to stop the Oregon offense.
I agree, and being in Oregon, that's the tough test too, because that's a tough place to play at. The spread right now for this weekend is 20.5. That tells you a lot right there. And I think a lot of people, I think Vegas kind of sees a lot of what everybody else is seeing, that this is not going to be as competitive as it probably could be. That's why I say if they're within a score, if Colorado's within a score, my God, tip your hat. That's a great job by the Colorado coaching staff and by the players to be able to hang with Oregon in Oregon. This will be a brand new, different atmosphere. A lot of these guys have never played. I mean, again, even the transfers that they brought in from Jackson State, Shedeur, Shiloh. I know Hunter's not playing in this game after the cheap shot he took, but you don't play in an atmosphere at Jackson State that you're going to get at Austin Stadium in Oregon. This is brand new for a lot of these guys that didn't experience this, and now even with the pressure on top of where you're at, that's again new environment and new atmosphere that you're going to be as a program. How do you handle it moving forward? And this is the first test. Again, if they're competitive, great. If they get blown out by 21 to 28 points, then yeah, as you said, the air out of your sails is going to be hitting very hard. And I agree. I think a lot of the fans are the big reason of this is making this a topic of Colorado. But I do think a lot of the national media continuously talking about Colorado and I think a lot of the national media is putting Colorado on the pedestal, saying, "Hey, what if?" Well, that's a dangerous thing to ask as a journalist, is what if? You're not supposed to play in the hypotheticals as much. You can play hypotheticals week by week. But if we're talking about what if 7-8 weeks from now, and they're saying, well, what if they are in the college football playoff? Well, they got to get past Oregon first. That this is their next test. Let's see if they get past Oregon. If they beat Oregon in Oregon, now let's talk about it. I'm fine with that, because you go to Oregon, very tough place, and beat a good team and a good offense. If you go and beat Oregon, I'm fine talking about it now, because that's going to jump them into the conversation a little bit more. But let's not play what if 5-6 weeks from now. Let's play what happens about this week. And I think the national media is putting a lot of conversation. And I know it's Deion Sanders wants it. He wants the attention. He's been that way for 30 years. He wants the attention. He wants the conversation, because Deion's also a smart businessman too, because he knows Colorado is not a high financial program. They don't make a lot of money. Heck, it came out that the athletic director didn't have the money to pay Deion's salary, got boosters to donate money to be able to bring him in. So he knows the more the national media talks about Colorado, the better the finances are for the program. So he wants that. He wants the attention. He loves the attention. We've known that for 30 plus years. But at the same time, let's draw a line in the conversation of expectations right now. There's no expectations for Colorado to be a playoff team, let alone being a bowl game team. They're already halfway there to being bowl eligible. I mean, you've beaten expectations, at least in the eyes of people who are grounded by college football and are not trying to jump into the Kool-Aid. This is great story. Let's see what happens this week first before we continue extending the story and putting them at a label that they're probably not ready for yet.
And JT, before we get you out of here, we want your picks for Monday Night Football tonight. We got not one, but two Monday Night Football games, two division battles. Let's start with the AFC. We have the Browns and the Steelers going at it tonight. Who do you got there?
I'm going with Cleveland. Cleveland had looked pretty good a week ago against Cincinnati, and there's some things they're still kind of getting things figured out a little bit. But I'm buying it that they look good. Steelers didn't look very good last week, and I think that's going to continue with this weekend with Monday night. I'm going to go Cleveland over Pittsburgh.
And then the second one we got is the Saints and the Panthers.
So don't take my shirt, what I'm wearing right now, as a pick. It was a very accidental type of color, and I'm very mad at myself right now. I'm very mad that I wore this shirt. But I am going with, I got to go with my New Orleans Saints. I got to go. Again, the defense looked really good last week against Tennessee. You have another quarterback who's a rookie this week that is turnover prone. He made some mistakes last week. I know it's in Carolina. We struggle at times in Carolina, but thankfully it's an early season matchup, which, if I remember correctly, and I don't know the stats, and I'm very mad at myself, I don't know the stats here, but when we play Carolina in either in September or October, we are actually more successful in Carolina than we are in the latter part of the year in November and December. So I like the fact that we are playing in September in Carolina against a rookie quarterback with our defense playing what it is, with Derek Carr, who looked good as well. I'm going New Orleans over Carolina tonight.
All right, JG. Like always, we appreciate having you here various times during the week, and we'll see you next time you stop by, sir.
Appreciate it, guys.
Mo, always a pleasure to have JG here on the show. But Mo, let me tell you, my guy, there is a lot to get to from yesterday, week 2 of the NFL season. But before we get into it, let's just start here, Mo. Tell me one thing you saw yesterday that stuck with you.
Oh, in the NFL, what stuck with me? Well, look, I'm biased.
That's okay. I'm okay with that.
My Niners finding a way to get back into the game and finding a way to win the game, in which a game that I think you and I talked about was going to be a tough game for them. I was concerned that a quarterback like Stafford, if he was protected well, he's the kind of quarterback, when he's on, he can keep your defense off balance with intermediate passes, short passes, some deep throws. And early on, he was doing all those things, and he really had the Niners confused. And I like the fact that the Niners came out, they switched up their coverages, and they were a lot more aggressive in the second half in terms of getting pressure on him. So, I mean, for me, that's what stood out for me. There were a lot of really good games, a lot of close games. You could have called it Cardiac Sunday. It was very entertaining football.
Mo, for the first time in the history of the NFL Red Zone, every early game on the slate, the game was in the red zone within the final minute before the half. First time ever in red zone history that's ever happened. All 8 games got into the red zone within the final 60 seconds before the end of the first half. So that just tells you what all the action that was going on in those games yesterday. But we'll start with San Francisco since that's what you opened up with. And you're right. It was almost a tale of two halves in that game, because you're looking 17-17 going in halftime. And going into the halftime of that game, I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, first of all, my first takeaway was, and we've talked about this before, Purdy's got to hit some of those deep balls.
Yeah.
There were a few deep balls, and it's not because he doesn't have the arm. It's because he just wasn't very accurate with his deep ball yesterday, and his anticipation with the deep ball wasn't really there yesterday. And there were 3 or 4 balls in the first half where I'm like, man, if he hit 2 of those, this isn't a tie game. And you're listening, the vibe just probably isn't the same. But you go into halftime tied. I don't have his name in front of me, so I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it. The young man for the Rams who set the record yesterday.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yep, he set the record.
I'm not trying to destroy that name either.
I know the other one is Tutu Atwell, and I love me some Tutu Atwell. But Tutu's running mate there. He set the record yesterday for the most catches in the first 2 games of an NFL career. He tied the record like before halftime, and he either set it right before halftime or right after. But obviously he was doing his thing in the first half of the game, and you look at it, and we know the Rams defense, is decent. There's some unknowns about it. And I have to say, I was kind of puffing my chest, Mo, in that first half, because I was the guy that a month and a half ago was like, listen, we're underselling the Rams. I'm not saying they're
Yeah.
a championship contender, but I think they're going to be in the playoff mix, and I still think that. I think the Rams showed that they have the defense, and remember, they're still doing this without Cooper Kupp, who is their best offensive weapon. Think about what that offense looks like with these two young kids once Cooper Kupp comes back. So I think you're looking at a team that, and again, the Niners are the class of that division. And I would say that Seattle is also going to be in the mix for a playoff spot, and they had a bounce back game yesterday as well. And you're looking at a Rams team that beat Seattle, and they hung in there for 2.5, 3 quarters with the Niners before the better defense just started playing better. And Stafford got pushed a little bit, and he was trying to press some things, and the turnovers started coming. And at the end of the day, it wasn't a blowout, Mo. It wasn't anything like that.
No.
But it was a situation where the Niners have an impactful defense, and they made impactful plays. And at the end of the day, this is a Rams team that's playing with kids in a lot of critical places. And that's going to catch up with you when you play against really good teams. And I think that's just what happened yesterday.
Yeah, look, I thought it was going to be a close game. I really did. Going in, when we talked about it last week, I didn't think as many points would be scored. I really was thinking about a 17-13 kind of thing. But you have to tip your hat to the Rams because you weren't it. So I'll tip my hat to you as well. I thought, looking at the Rams roster top to bottom, this is a team that might win 5 or 6 games. And I was really concerned with their offensive line. Had no idea. Knew they had drafted these young guys. I'm talking about the receivers, that they would be so pro ready. Like, they're ready now. These guys, they're young receivers. They're kind of what Kansas City wishes their young receivers were. Like, these guys coming in and out of their breaks, great hands. They play like they're 2 or 3 year veterans. Like, and then you've got Stafford bouncing back from the injury, and he's just dropping dimes all over the place. So I thought that would be a problem. And if you're going to have a healthy Stafford along with these 2 young guys stepping up, and you get Cooper Kupp back, that means that these young guys slide down to be in the 2 and 3. That's a tough receiving core, and suddenly that offense becomes even more explosive. So I'm actually very impressed with the Rams, and I do think you're right. When it's all said and done, they're going to be in the playoff hunt.
A little bit of drama in Rams country. They deactivated Cam Akers leading into that game yesterday. Apparently, he is not in favor with the Rams once again. It seems like this is a cycle with Cam Akers. The running back that stepped in for him yesterday, though, was phenomenal. So I don't think the Rams are going to miss Akers in the running back room. They have Higbee at tight end, who is more than serviceable in the NFL today. So I think this is going to be an 8 or 9 win team that is going to be competing for a wild card in a weak NFC conference, coming down to the season. Do I think they're going to compete for the division? No. I think that you're looking at a San Francisco squad that's going to win 11, 12, 13 games. I just don't think the Rams have that kind of juice to get there. So unless there's injuries with San Francisco to where they're more of a 9 or 10 win team, I don't see them competing for a division. But I do think that a wild card competition is in the future.
They do have the best
Rams.
quarterback in the division.
Yes, they do.
I want people to know that. And if he can get on top of you, and it almost worked yesterday, and you put pressure on Purdy to have to make plays, Purdy prefers not to push the ball down the field.
Correct.
Even though he should have hit on a few of those passes, I was right there watching, shaking my head because they were beat. The guys were there, and he just wasn't accurate. But I think if you get Purdy's not the kind of quarterback. The Niners, as diverse as their offense is, they're not built for a shootout. And so I think that's what makes the Rams very dangerous, because I think when they're fully healthy with Cooper Kupp back in the fold, they're built for a shootout. They can put up 35 points on you.
Another game, Mo, yesterday, and you gave me some props, so I'm going to give you some props. You called it. You said the Dolphin-Patriot game was going to be close. You said that it wasn't necessarily going to be a shootout. You thought it would be more of a low-scoring game. And then we both picked Miami to win that game. And, Mo, you were 100% correct. It was not a shootout. It was not necessarily a high-scoring game. The final on that game last night was 24-17 Miami. And I look at kind of the blowback after the game. And, obviously the last play was a little bit wonky. So, I'll acknowledge that, Patriot fan. It was a little wonky there towards the end of the game. But, Mo, I give credit to the New England defense. But if you look at the history of Bill Belichick with Tyreek Hill, Tyreek has always struggled against Bill Belichick, and that goes back to his Kansas City days. Right. Tyreek has never had a 100-yard receiving day against a Bill Belichick defense. In Tyreek's career, even when he had Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback, he always struggles to get his numbers against Bill Belichick defenses because Bill Belichick, what does he do? He takes away your biggest weapon, and he takes away what you like to do best. So, no, we did not see the same Dolphins offense that we saw week 1 against the Chargers defense. But, Mo, I would almost argue we saw a better Dolphins team last night because we saw a Dolphins team where when you take away their number one option on offense, when you take away what they want to do as from a scheming standpoint on offense, what happened? Well, they turned around, they ran the ball down your throat, almost 150 yards on the ground. Mostert had 120 or 130 of those on his own with a couple of touchdowns. And it wasn't, fancy, outside trick runs. It was between the tackles. They ran the ball between the tackles at the New England Patriots defense.
That was impressive.
And they were successful doing it. And right. More importantly, their defense stopped the running game of the New England Patriots. This same defense that gave up 240 plus yards last week to the Chargers, the same defense that analysts were looking at this week saying, well, with Stevenson and Zeke, they're going to run the ball down the Miami's throat, and Miami's not going to be able to stop them. And I was a little concerned, I'm not going to lie. But they essentially took away the strength of the Patriots. Much the same, the Patriots took away their strength on defense. The only difference was Miami had a backup plan. The Patriots didn't. Once you took away the run game from the Patriots, and I know the score is a little misleading if you ask me, because there was never really a moment, except for right towards the end of the game, that I really thought New England was in this game, Mo. Even though it was a one-score game, even when it was a two-score game, I'm looking at this game, and I was never really concerned because if you look at the flow of the game, there was never really a moment where the Patriots had any momentum. I mean, I was laughing because I was with a couple of buddies watching the game, and there were several stretches during the game where the loudest Foxborough got was when Miami got a penalty because there just wasn't anything to cheer for when the Patriots had the ball. So, Mo, my biggest takeaway from this game is that the Dolphins have now shown they can win two ways. They can be that elite offense, which Tua showed us last year with Tyreek, with Waddle, the explosiveness, the speed, the down the field game. They also showed us they can run the ball between the tackles, and they can do it where the running game leads the way, and their speed ends up becoming crossing speed and 10 to 15 intermediate speed. And they can dominate the ball on the defensive side. They can have long drives. If anything, Mo, I think Miami showed the NFL they can do it multiple ways, which in my opinion shows that they're more of a complete team than maybe some people thought they were coming out of their week 1 victory.
Because of how Bill Belichick schemes on defense, it required Tua and the offense to be patient. Literally take what they gave you in the passing game. So you were going to get more short passes, more intermediate routes. But because they were so focused on controlling Tyreek Hill and Waddle in the pass game, Tua was patient. They turned around and they established a run. Like you said, I was impressed that Miami, they played what I thought the Patriots would play. They played 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They were very physical. They were very physical. And Mozart's really more of a, I would call him a breakaway back. Uh, he was an ex-Niner, but he ran the ball well between the tackles. I thought everybody on Miami ran the ball well between the tackles. They controlled. It's funny. You expected New England to try to possess the ball and control the clock, and it was Miami. Miami showed you that they can win in another way. So I think that's scary that Tua can go, oh, this is not going to be a game where I throw for 300 or 400 yards. I'm good with throwing for two something and us rushing for 150 yards. We can win that way too. And then it was big that the defense stepped up because I really did think that with Stevenson and Elliott, they were going to rush for about 150, 160 yards and control the clock and possess the football. And Miami's defense flipped that around. So they were impressive to me on both sides of the ball in that kind of game because that's more of a physicality war of attrition. And maybe on the outside you look at Miami because of how explosive they can be, and you think they're a finesse team, but I think they showed you yesterday they're more than that.
Mo, tale of two halves again in the New York Giants Arizona Cardinals game yesterday. The Cardinals jump out to a 20-point halftime lead. Midway through the third quarter, they were up 28-7. The New York Giants eventually come back to win the game, scoring 24 unanswered points. They win 31-28. If you look at it just in the microcosm of the game, great for the New York Giants. Obviously, you need to win the games that are on your schedule. Obviously, things happen in an NFL game that maybe you don't plan, that you need to overcome. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is getting the W in the current game that you're looking at. But Mo, that's the most positive thing I can say about the New York Giants coming out of this game, because I cannot sit here this morning and say I was impressed. I cannot sit here this morning and say that I saw things that I'm going to say they're going to build, for the next 3 or 4 games. The Arizona Cardinals are an absolutely terrible team, 100%. So no, I'm not impressed that Daniel Jones let it come back. I'm not impressed that for a quarter and a half of football, Daniel Jones looked like a top 10 quarterback, because you're literally doing it against a team that we all actively think is not trying to win games. Mo, I am more convinced that midway through the third quarter, the Arizona Cardinals owner woke up from his nap in the owner's box, saw what was going on, was very confused about what the heck was happening, made a phone call down to the sidelines and was like, "Excuse me, we're not winning this game." And then the head coach was like, "All right, sorry, my bad. Right. Got ahead of myself." Because, this is not a good team. Arizona is not a good team. So I expected the Giants to win this game in the first place. Yes, it's impressive that because you have to complete the comeback. So I get that. Like I said, in the confines of just the game, it was impressive. But when I'm looking outside the game and at what the Giants are going forward, I'm looking at a team that was outscored 60-0 over the first 6 quarters of football this season. I'm looking at a team that needed a 24-point comeback to beat a team that's probably going to have 1, maybe 2 wins this season. I'm looking at a defense that made the quarterback for Arizona look like he was Lamar Jackson out there, running all over the place. He was Josh Allen putting his shoulder into people, bouncing into the end zone. Mo, Arizona's a bad team, and I don't think the New York Giants are that much better.
I did not have the Giants making the playoffs this season coming into the year. I really thought that Daniel Jones would have had to take like 2 steps forward in his development, and he would have to be a much better version of himself from last season for them to have a repeat. I don't think he's going to be able to sustain that or do that over the course of the season. I just don't think the Giants have enough talent on both sides of the ball. And when I was watching that game, I was thinking like you were thinking, like, man, somebody's going to get in trouble because Arizona's trying to win this. And I was kind of where you were, like, that guy's going to get a phone call and they're going to be like, what are you doing? You're calling a good game. What are you doing? He said, remember the plan, the number one pick. Do I have to get another person in there? You know what I mean? Like it. To Arizona's credit, in all seriousness, they're showing, at least the players are, they're very competitive. They're putting up a fight in the first two games, and good for them. They're professionals, they're athletes, they have pride as well. So I like that, but we don't think they're a good football team, big picture. The Giants came into the season, at least a lot of Giants fans, and they had playoffs, maybe even Super Bowl aspirations. I didn't see that in them, but I'm looking at the Giants and I'm like, you have to go through all that to beat the Cardinals. And like you said, you had 60 points dropped on you before you scored. Like that's kind of crazy. And so I honestly don't know what the Giants' identity is. I don't think the Giants know what their identity is. I know that Dayball's a good coach, but I think going forward, this is going to be a very rocky up and down season for New York Giants fans.
Another thing that I know, Mo, is, and that I think we both knew this. I think we both said this on this show over the past week, and I think we both deserve our flowers because Zach Wilson is not the future of the New York Jets. Zach Wilson is not a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL, and I am sorry, New York Jet fan, but if you sat there and you looked in the mirror this past week and you said the words, I'm riding with Zach, or Zach's our guy, or you said any of that nonsense because you felt like there was a chance, I need you to stop. I also need Aaron Rodgers to stop because he's sitting here saying, I'll be back for the playoffs. Aaron, that's great. You'll be back for the playoffs to watch it on your couch with the rest of your team, because I don't know what you think Zach Wilson is going to do, but it's not leading your team to the playoffs. And Mo, I get it. I get that the Dallas Cowboys have easily a top 3 defense in this league, and they played like it yesterday. And I know that Zach Wilson is going to have easier opportunities down the road this season as far as the quality of the team that he is playing against. But you put 10 points up against the Dallas Cowboys defense. There was never a moment in that game yesterday, Mo, where I really felt like the New York Jets were really even in the game. I know for a good stretch of the game, and early on it was 18-10, so technically it was a one-score game for a little bit early on in the game. I never felt like the Jets had a chance to win that game. I never felt like the Jets had a chance to tie that game. If you watched the game and you looked at how Zach Wilson was playing, he had the one great play to Wilson for the touchdown. And let's be fair, because people want to do this to Tua. When it happens to Tua, when Tua hits a slant and Waddle takes it 60 yards, the first thing they say is, well, he's got one of the fastest receivers in the league. It was only a 15-yard pass. Okay, Jet fan, you guys are the first ones at the front of the pack saying that nonsense. It was a 15-yard pass that a great receiver took to the house. You take that one play out of the game, you didn't score a touchdown. You scored 3 points. Mo, they're a bad team with a bad quarterback. Now let me rephrase that. That was mean. That was wrong. They're a great defense with an average offense with a bad quarterback.
They have so right. But it's the bad quarterback that makes the offense average, right? Because they do have talent. Garrett Wilson's a talent on the outside. You've got talent in the backfield with Breece Hall and his name escapes me, but the ex-Vikings running back.
Cough up the ball, Cook.
Right. Well, he did do that. Well, I mean, look, Micah Parsons just made a great play. A great player made a great play. He made a beast move and just yanked it from him. But they have talent to me offensively. The offensive line is actually a good run blocking offensive line, not so much in the pass game. And again, this isn't bang on their quarterback. I want to kill the young guy. It's just that a lot of people want to make the argument because he spent some time with Aaron Rodgers in the summer that some of that rubbed off on him. And that's not how that works. That's not how that works. Maybe he could have learned with Aaron Rodgers over the course of a season, right? On the bench, watching Aaron Rodgers, maybe trying to emulate some of his habits, picking up some things here and there, and maybe putting that into practice and eventually putting that out on the field. But he wasn't coming into this season as a starter. He was coming into this season as the guy that was carrying a clipboard. And their offense is in a tailspin because they don't have a quarterback, at least a guy who's a starting quarterback. Let me be clear. I don't want to say that he can't play in the NFL because obviously he can, but I don't think he's a good starting quarterback. And when people were coming at us because we were going, better start calling up people. I mean, where's Teddy Bridgewater and where's Brissett? And you make fun of it, but guess what? You might want to call up one of the older guys, Philip Rivers. It's funny, and you can say Rivers is cooked, but even the cooked version of Philip Rivers is better than the current version that they have now. So I believe they can say all that stuff about we're rolling with him, but if they're trying to actually make the playoffs, they're going to bring in another quarterback.
Mo, I turned on the Colts game yesterday, and to my surprise, who was leading the Colts up and down? Oh, it was Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew was leading the Colts offense up and down the field yesterday. And, obviously I don't want any injuries to Anthony Richardson. It is, that's very unfortunate. But I'm sitting there looking at what? Put him on the Jets? And now we're talking. Now, we're still not talking Super Bowl. But now I can look at it and say, he could potentially get him to a wild card with all the offense around him. Whereas, because he is head and shoulders a better quarterback than Zach Wilson is. And Mo, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and we had a segment on the show where we were talking about, and this was with Aaron Rodgers. We were talking about teams that could implode if things start going a little crazy. And even with Aaron Rodgers, we were saying things like, this could be a 12-win team. This could be a 5-win team. Like we could see the entire spectrum just depending on how things shook out. Mo, I'm a little concerned for the Jets because after that loss yesterday, we saw some red flags of implosion. We had a little situation over on social media with Breece Hall and what cornerback's name? It's escaping me right now. Sauce
Mitchell.
So with Sauce and Breece Hall over on X, we had Sauce getting into it with fans before he deleted his social media. And then we had Breece Hall with some cryptic social media posts that seemed to reference the fact that he only got 4 carries in yesterday's game. So, Mo, I have to ask you this. Isn't this kind of what we were wondering about with the New York Jets? It being kind of volatile, things kind of riding on that razor's edge. And now you got a situation where you had a Super Bowl aspiration team with a defensive coach, without your Hall of Fame quarterback, with a guy, Mo, who 7 months ago lost the locker room to the point where not only was he benched, but we didn't think he was going to... why aren't we talking about that? This roster didn't turn over to the point where it's, 50% new guys or 75% new guys. This is basically the same roster as last season, maybe with 15% new people on it. The same roster that didn't like Zach Wilson. The same roster that when Zach Wilson went to the podium after being absolutely abysmal and was asked if you think the offense was part of the reason why you lost, and he said no. That's the same guy 7 months ago that the team didn't want anymore. How are we pretending that none of this happened? How are we pretending that we're like the Brady Bunch now and everything is just happy-go-lucky? Because, Mo, I literally think it's about to blow up in New York after a couple more of these losses, and it's not going to be pretty.
And Saleh's a really good coach. He's one of those coaches that's probably a great motivator, but you can only do so much with motivation. At some point, you actually have to have the talent to go out there and execute. And I'm not saying Zach Wilson isn't a capable NFL backup. The problem with that is he's the Jets starter, and he shouldn't be their starter. And it's not just all on him. So Aaron Rodgers goes down. That's terrible, and that's epic, and it changes their expectations. But right now, I'd like to know who's the leader of that team. I'm not talking about the coach. That's Saleh, obviously, but who's the leader in that locker room? Who do people talk to? because it is a younger team when you start talking about the guys at the skill positions, right? And that's evident because you pointed out the frustration, right? Brees Hall now, I didn't get enough carries, right? Sauce Mitchell's upset because fans are coming to him because they're saying like they was giving it to you or whatever. Like they're showing the frustration, they're showing their youth, and I want to know where's the leaders at? Where are the leaders in that team? Because my guess is the best players or the leaders are probably on that defense. And that right now to me, that team, it's a powder keg, Chris, because I really think the expectations were so high. You get deflated after game one, even though you won. And then you come out, not surprisingly to me, not maybe to others, but not surprising to you, and get beat by Dallas, which we told our guy, we told Freddie, Dallas's pass rush is much worse than Buffalo's pass rush. They're coming to get you. So you had to know eventually Zach Wilson's going to be Zach Wilson. And what does that mean? He's going to throw balls he shouldn't. It's just who he is. It's who he is. If you want a reference point, I don't like bringing his name up that often, but think Ryan Leaf, walking turnover. It's who he is. And if you're a Jets fan, you have to be feeling frustration as well. I'm with you. I'm wondering how come we don't talk about what's clearly going on. It's a locker room divided, and it's a locker room that seems to be lacking leadership within the locker room itself. I'm not saying their season is over. They're 1-1. They're 1-1. But the mission is to win games, get into the playoffs. If you're not going to bring in a veteran quarterback, if you're not going to make any type of change at the quarterback position, then you're not going to make the playoffs.
In the chat, Kyle said they have Randall Cobb. Kyle, I think you're confused. I know the Jets pay Randall Cobb, but right now he's pushing Aaron Rodgers around in a wheelchair. Randall is Aaron's guy.
I'm going to say Cobb goes wherever Aaron goes. So you're more likely to see Cobb on the Pat McAfee show than you see him on the field for the Jets.
That's Aaron's boy. So if Aaron's not there, I don't think Cobb is there either. They were a partnership. Then you got Lazard, who's probably like, well, wait a minute, where are all my people? I didn't come in here to deal with this nonsense. But Mo, there's one person. There is one person on that New York Jets team this morning who is happy, and that is Nathaniel Hackett. Nathaniel Hackett woke up this morning. Nathaniel Hackett woke up this morning and he said, "Hey, I am not the problem. It's not me." Because the Denver Broncos are 0-2. And even though they look like a more competent team without Nathaniel Hackett, and Nathaniel, it was you. You were definitely a part of the problem because the Broncos look like an NFL franchise now. Whereas when you were running them, I didn't know what was happening over there. But in Nathaniel's defense, they're not a good team. They lose another close game. Russell is having the same issues that he had last week. He's having the same issues that we saw last season. I believe they roll into Miami next week for Miami's home opener, which I don't know what that defense, what they're going to get because Sam Howell was cutting them up yesterday. So
yeah, I was really impressed with Sam Howell, but how'd that defense go from being like a top threat? They just looked really bad yesterday. And look, the offense wasn't great, but the problem last year was the offense couldn't do just enough. I would argue that the offense, even though Russell didn't have a great game, they did enough. But for the defense to be what it was, to give up that much, and look, maybe what we're overlooking is maybe Sam Howell's just getting better because we think he's a competent quarterback that can be the leader of your football team. So I wasn't surprised that Sam Howell played well. I was surprised that he made it look so easy versus that defense.
I agree. And to your point, Mo, last season, you didn't see games where the Broncos were giving up 33 and they needed to score, 34 or 35 to hang in.
Right.
The narrative last season was the Broncos were giving up 10, 14, 16 points, and they just needed to score 20 to win the game, and they couldn't do that. So if you're a Denver fan, hopefully we get back to that point. But I'm a little concerned with the defensive side of it. I'm a little concerned with what I'm still seeing for Russ. But like I said, if you're Nathaniel Hackett this morning, you are raising all the praise because you're thinking it is not a situation with you, and you are absolutely happy about that.
Chris, he's the only guy in the Jets coaching room smiling right now.
That is correct.
I don't know what's going on with Nathaniel. We just lost, and somebody probably whispered, "You know what's going on."
So, rounding out the other things that we saw from week 2, the Atlanta Falcons moved to 2-0. A little bit of a surprise there. We're going to break down all the 2-0 teams tomorrow here on the morning show to really get into what we see there. But the Atlanta Falcons moved to 2-0 against the Green Bay Packers. Buffalo gets back on the winning track against the not great Las Vegas Raiders. Absolutely routed them 38-10. Baltimore goes to 2-0. Mo, are you surprised Cincinnati 0-2?
I am. I mean, even with my concerns about that offensive line, they just look bad offensively, period. Like, if you watch the game, I didn't watch the whole game, but what I watched is I feel like Jamar Chase and the other receivers, they're struggling to get separation, but one of the reasons they're struggling to get separation is Joe Burrow's having to get rid of the ball with like 3 seconds. Like, I mean, they're shedding that offensive line like butter. And I think Joe Burrow's been under duress and he's struggling. He's struggling right now. Now, no excuses made. I still think Joe Burrow has not played well. If you watch the game, he missed them on a lot of there was a play where Jamar Chase did a double move and he was wide open and Joe Burrow just overshot him by a mile. Like, he's just not playing well. So am I surprised that they're absolutely look, most people probably had Cincinnati winning that division.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of them. I'll admit it. I'm one of them. I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong. And look, it's early. We'll see how the things shake out. But you always bring this up to me. When you're in a division and you dig a deep hole early, it is very hard to climb out. And they're in a hole early. And look, that offensive line, you don't solve that overnight, that kind of problem. And it should have gotten solved in the offseason. If it's a bad offensive line now, I have to believe they're going to be a bad offensive line throughout the year.
And Mo, we're going to wrap up today's show. Who do you like tonight?
I'm going with Cleveland. I'm going with Cleveland. I think Cleveland finds the way to beat the Steelers. I think Deshaun Watson is the better quarterback, and I like the way that Cleveland defense is playing. So I think Cleveland wins the game because Cleveland does have an offensive identity. It's Nick Chubb.
I am also going Cleveland tonight. In the second Monday Night Football game, we got the Saints and the Panthers. I'm going Saints. I just haven't seen enough from the Panthers. I don't like their offensive line. I don't particularly care for their defense. So I think the Saints are going to roll tonight too.
Yeah, I'm with you and JG. I think his Saints win tonight, and I don't think it's going to be a close game.
All right, Mo. Well, like I said, it's the start of a football week here on Coffee and Sports, the morning show. Tomorrow morning, make sure you join us because we are going to be breaking down all of the 2-0 teams tomorrow to kind of figure out who is a contender, who is a pretender. We ran out of a little bit of time this morning, Mo, but tomorrow we're going to talk about it. Baker Mayfield is 2-0. Like, we got...
You didn't believe, and I did.
I know. You did believe. So, real quick before we get out of here, though, how do we had 4 games that we didn't agree with. You took the Washington one. You took the Tampa Bay. Oh, you whooped me. You took the Tampa Bay one. You took the Kansas City one, but I took the Atlanta one. Where we didn't agree, it goes to Mo this week. He took 3 out of the 4 where our opinions differed. You had a really good week picking games, Mo.
Yeah, a better week at picking games than in fantasy football. I am getting destroyed.
Oh, I got destroyed this week in our sports empire. I was destroyed on Thursday. The guy I was playing this week, he put up like 120 points with 3 players.
Wow.
Or no, 90 something. They each scored over 30. He was at 100 after 3 players played on Thursday. I was like, I'm done. Like, I didn't even adjust my lineup for the weekend because I was projected to lose by about 50. So, all right, Mo, let's get out of here. Take us out, sir.
Thanks for everybody in the chat. Make sure you smash that like button. Everybody, thanks for sharing. Check out all the great content we got at Sports Empire Network. Hey, check out my guys tonight at 6:30 on the cheap seats. Check out Gene and Kyle and the crew. Check out everything we offer at Sports Empire Network. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, if you're not joining the cheap seats every Monday here on the network, you are missing out. That's one of my favorite shows that the network has to offer.
No
So, like
doubt.
Mo said, make sure you're watching them tonight. Thank you to JG for coming on the show. Thank you to everyone that was in the chat today. Kyle, my guy, love having you in there. Big Patriots
Always.
fan. Big Patriots fan. Yeah, I mean, we got a big week ahead of us, Mo. So I'm super excited to get it started here today. Make sure you are
Let's
with
go.
us tomorrow, same time, same place. Coffee and Sports. It's the morning show here on Sports Empire Network, and we will see you again tomorrow morning.